All right. So today I have Pat Curran on the Primal cast. Pat, do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself so they know who you are and why they should listen to you?
Yeah, cool. Okay. Well, first off, thanks for the opportunity, John. I'm looking forward to having a good chat, man. I
Of
know you're
course.
obviously a passionate coach and a big time lifter. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be an interesting conversation.
It will be.
So my name is, for anyone that hasn't picked up on the accent yet, my name is Pat. I'm from Ireland. I've been living in Canada here for the last six, almost 7 years. I'm 35 now, 35 years old now. I did my first bodybuilding competition when I was 16. Pretty much spent the next half of my life in the iron sports. I've done bodybuilding, powerlifting, just one strongman competition so far. And yeah, I've been coaching full time now for about 7 or 8 years as well. So um, yeah, just love all things iron sports.
Yeah, you've been in it for a long time too. Same as myself. So yeah, it's one of those things when you've been in it that long and you coach this long, there's a lot of stuff that you have insights on. So I think like what I find cool is your story is very like interesting. Like how you kind of started out and like even coming here. So you want to maybe like talk a little bit about that if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. So where will I start? I suppose to go back further, as I said, I started bodybuilding when I was 16, and in my mind at that time, that's all I wanted to do was just like a total kind of meathead. I was in the gym. I didn't really care about school, to be honest with you. I didn't do very well in high school, and I was just working in the security industry back in Ireland. I was doing nightclubs, pubs, and on the weekends, and I was doing like retail security stuff like that during the week, and that was pretty much all I was doing apart from training. And needless to say, that became started to become quite unfulfilling. I was
Fair.
around 23, 24, and I just knew, to be honest, people ask me how did I get into coaching. The only thing I knew at that point was like I didn't want to do security. It wasn't, if I'm totally honest, it wasn't like
Like a
oh, I
big
want to be a coach.
epiphany. Yeah,
I
it wasn't
have
like
to be a coach. It was just like, no, I just want to get out of this.
fair.
So I applied. I actually applied maybe 2 or 3 years in a row to get into to do university. We're quite fortunate in Ireland. We have a good standard of education, and we actually have two separate university degrees in the country, in a small country, in strength and conditioning. So I applied for. I remember getting rejected twice from my first choice of school, and the way things worked out. Anyway, I got accepted to my second choice, and that was a blessing. So when I was about 25, 26, I got into university. At that point, I had experienced the real world, so to speak, and um, not having a whole lot of money and just, I suppose, grinding, And when I got into university, it was like, right, I need to make this work. I was 25, I was 26. I wasn't there to screw around like some of the guys out of high school. Like it was like this was serious. I just switched on. Um, After my first year, there was an opportunity for the people that got the highest results in first year to do an exchange program to Canada for second year. So we did an exchange. Fortunately, I was one of three that was picked then to come over to Canada. I did a year of the same program, strength and sports conditioning, up in North Bay. When I was in second year, that would have been 2015, 2016. Absolutely, for some reason, I've just fell in love with Canada. I described it to somebody during the week. It's like if you had like a sheepdog or a farm dog, and it lived in an apartment all its life, and then suddenly it was like put on a farm. It was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is like it
Ah,
just
you just like found it and you're like, this is dope.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Even
Yeah.
I remember even my mom reminding me somewhat recently like that. I was speaking to her within the first week or two of when I was over there, and she was like, "Gee, this sounds pretty serious. Like, he sounds like he really loves it. Like, I don't know if he's going to come back at all." But anyway, I loved it up there in North Bay. I finished second year. I went back to Ireland, and I did third and fourth year of my degree back home.
Mm.
In that time, I started coaching in North Bay, just follow on a volunteer basis, and we were coaching some strength training in a high school, and doing some powerlifting as well. Um, So I went back. That gave me a lot of confidence, kind of, because that was really the first time I'd ever actually coached as much as I had been a meathead and in the gym myself.
Mm,
Just coaching the teenagers up in North Bay and a bit of powerlifting. I kind of just give me a bit of confidence, made me think, yeah, I'm not too bad at this. I can actually, I like this. I can do this. So
mm,
then when I went back, I invested in just a power rack, bench, and set up a sort of converted my garage at home and just set up a basic personal training studio. Basically, I did that for my last 2 years of university. Um, long story short, I was in a relationship through all that
yeah.
period as well. That kind of broke down
Mm,
quite suddenly in my final year of university. So I basically just wrote out that time. I graduated my university on Friday, and on Monday I flew to Toronto, and I've basically been here since. So yeah, I didn't know what was going on, or I didn't really have a plan for the rest of my life. I needed a fresh start. The relationship really took its kind of toll on me, and I just was like, right, I'm just going to get out of here for a while. Went to Canada, and yeah, the rest is history, as they say. So that was 6 or 7 years ago now.
yeah, it's a pretty crazy story. Like not many people will actually like they say they want to do stuff like that and like commit to whatever they're doing, but like a lot of times they just don't.
Yeah, yeah, and I think in some ways it was a I won't get into it now, but it was like it
Oh,
was traumatic. It was a tough time. It was a tough experience
yeah.
to go through that, but it definitely was a blessing. And just totally outside of training for anyone listening, like it is something that I really do live with and try to instill in other people. Is like you're not stuck in any job, location, town, city, country. Like you can forge and create your own life, and it just takes a bit of courage and grit. And there's definitely some teething problems. And when I came to Canada, I was put on basically the bottom rung of the ladder again in terms of, I didn't have a car. I was on the bus.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wasn't entitled to OHIP or anything at the time. Just, you start again, but you
Starting
can
at
make it
zero.
work. And
Yeah.
yeah, start at
Some
zero.
people
And
have a hard time with that, but that's the right mindset to take with it. And I find
yeah, yeah,
like even for myself, like going through certain things will always make you better. It sucks when it's
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
It probably really sucked. And I would imagine it really sucked, but I think it really kind of shaped who you are. But also I think it really shapes when I look at your coaching and your content and the clients that you work, because I've actually worked with you. I can really tell that's kind of what you're trying to really help with these men that you work with, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think, not to sort of toot my own horn, but I think kind of going through my own struggles. And as I said, like that, when that relationship broke down in my last year of university, like also on top of that, I was prepping for a bodybuilding competition. And I just, I stayed locked into my prep, and I managed to get through the prep through like a lot of emotional troubles. And I think that not to toot my own horn, but it probably does come across in my coaching a little bit. I've kind of set the standard for myself.
Yeah.
Like, no, you just got to get it done. You
You're
just
kind
got
of
to get it
walking the
done.
walk there.
And I've walked the walk myself, and I kind of expect not saying the exact same, but I expect high standards of the guys that I coach then too. Like, yeah,
Which is good. I mean, like all coaches, I think we should actually like practice what we preach. It doesn't mean we have to be IFBB pros
yeah,
or like
yeah,
all-time great powerlifters, but I think
yeah.
especially with what you're doing, I think it makes sense that you've been good at both.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah. And I think even from a client's perspective, it's not so much, you don't necessarily need to, from a coach perspective, you don't necessarily need to get up and stand on a pedestal and say, hey, I went through this and I'm still
Mm.
training and I'm doing this. People can just feel it. They can feel
Yeah,
when you're serious. They can feel when you're just getting it done, when you're
yeah, you
you're
just
you're
got that
serious
vibe
about it.
where you're just
Yeah, you
putting
got
in the
that
work.
vibe, and you
Yeah.
can't fake that shit. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
no, that makes a lot of sense. And then let's forward to kind of like your coaching practice. So when did you kind of decide? And I think you had like I think you were like an in-person trainer for a while, and then you transitioned to the online. You want to talk a little
Yeah.
bit about
Yeah. So when I came to Canada, I started coaching. Initially, I did a short stint in actually coaching kids for hockey,
that?
in a sort of a sports performance gym. Yeah.
Yeah, how'd that go?
Didn't know the first thing about hockey, but yeah, look, I knew how to train people.
Yep.
But that was all right.
Yeah.
Then I started about 6, 8 months after this. I started personal training in a place called Iron Fitness in Markham. To be totally honest, as well, I actually had to, when I came to Canada, I had to work for
Yeah, you
somebody
have to
else
keep
because, like,
your, yeah,
for
your
my
PR.
visa
Yeah,
situation and
yeah.
everything. So, you know, it was just kind of, I wasn't really thinking too much about
You
being
weren't thinking
self-employed. So
future and building and all that stuff.
yeah, yeah, I was like, I got
Um,
to get my hour. You just
yeah,
got to rack up a certain amount of hours so you're
yep,
entitled to get your permanent residence.
yeah.
So anyway, I started coaching in Iron Fitness. I was personal training guys. It was good. Definitely enjoyed it. I like pushing people. I like pushing people through hard workouts. I did probably find a lot of the guys that I like to coach and that I love to coach, they don't necessarily need somebody in the gym with them. Like, okay, this is the bicep curl. This is this. You know, they just need to be told like, this is what, you know, this is your nutrition. This is your training program. You know, and give me feedback, give me questions as you go through it. But they don't necessarily need the motivation of somebody there to motivate them. So I did find it a little bit challenging to pick up clients for my niche or for the people that I most wanted to work with. Um, Obviously, COVID happened. Um, COVID happened, which shut down the gyms. I started transitioning a little bit to on. Well, I transitioned basically fully to online coaching as much as I could, but I had just had a small handful of clients. But all this time, I was just waiting to go back to the gym, waiting for the gyms to open back up. I think we actually went back for maybe a week or two, you know, in the
Yeah,
when
there's a
the
bunch of
gyms were
that where it's
open.
back and forth, back and forth. I
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
going
back
to
and
the
forth,
gym
back and forth.
every
Gyms gyms were closed, gyms were open, blah blah blah.
day.
And basically, I got up. I remember getting up one Sunday morning. I was on a camping trip. I got up very early in the morning, and I had to like pack my gear and hike out and get back down to the gym for a personal training session. And on the way out, just maybe 10, 15 minutes before we got to the car, I fell. I tore my patellar tendon and ruptured my patellar tendon. And I've kind of skipped a little bit of the story, but that was actually my second patellar tendon rupture in the space of 12 months. So I did my other one before that.
Wow,
But so I knew that was going to be like
tough.
3 months on the
Yeah.
3 months on the couch. That was going to be no personal training. So
Mm.
that was when I really,
It's
you
like,
know, I obviously I got my surgery. I got over the first week or two of the pain, and you know, just surviving basically. But I remember just one day in particular, about maybe 2 weeks after I tore that patella tendon, it's such a simple act, but it was the first thing I sort of did officially was like I actually just got a list, like wrote down a list of the people I was working with that I was coaching. Because before it was just in my head, like, oh, I have that guy, I have this guy, like maybe
mm,
5 or 6 people. I was like, right, how many do I have? Wrote down the list. And I was like, okay, I need to build this list. I need to, you know, get the best results I can with these guys. And I just sort of started growing from there. So again, you know, it's a team that we've already talked about, but it's like those challenges and those hurdles that you come up against. You know, I'd honestly say like the second patellar tendon rupture was probably the best thing to happen to me in that year. It really just pushed me into um, the right alignment, I suppose.
yeah, that makes sense. Because like, yeah, it seemed like after that point, and I think online, I think is when you really took off actually, from what like I could see from like the outside. Because I have followed you over the years, and I'm like, huh, all of a sudden this guy's like, he's out there. Seems like he's getting the right type of client for him.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what
yeah,
happened.
yeah. It's been good as well. Like about half my clients are actually still based in Ireland, which is nice for me. It kind of keeps me grounded that way, and it just opens up doors now for it, or breaks down doors maybe, or limitations around geography or where exactly you're based. You know, so it's been nice to work with people all over. Yeah,
Yeah, it kind of
thanks,
opens you
John.
up to get more of
Yeah,
those people that like
exactly,
you,
exactly.
as opposed
Yeah,
to just like
exactly.
Mississauga or wherever you're at.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Which can be a challenge for sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Yeah. So, what's the kind of like the path forward with this kind of coaching brand that you got now? Is it kind of going to stay the same, or it's just evolve as it evolves, like you've been doing?
Yeah, I suppose that's a good question. On the one hand, I don't really look too far left or right in terms of I
Fair.
don't really have too much shiny object syndrome, or just kind of like, right, I want to just keep growing this. This is definitely my main thing with the Kaizen tribe. But I have found, and you probably find this as well as a coach, like as I grow and as I change and as even just as I get older, I find that I'm attracting different guys and I'm kind of getting more, maybe even more interested in different styles of training and stuff like that. So like my average client age is definitely increasing as I age myself, which is fine, and it feels aligned. But I can, yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer that, John. I'm probably
Fair.
going through something a little bit myself at the minute because I absolutely I love coaching. I love coaching powerlifting. I love coaching bodybuilding. We've done it now the last 3 years to get guys on stage. But I just know for me, my heart is not in that anymore. But to actually do it, to actually
Yeah.
practice it. So I'm definitely going through something a little bit in terms of where do I want to go with my own training, and
Mm.
I do find that where you take your own training tends to sort of your clients almost come with you, or you're getting new clients with that style of
Kind
training,
of funny,
So
but it definitely does. Like I've noticed that too. Like when I've had periods
yeah,
where I wasn't as focused on powerlifting, whereas I am now, like pretty much like way into it now. It's kind of one of those things where it's like I didn't have as many of those, and now when I'm getting more into it, I have more and more people that want to just power lift, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. But I've noticed
yeah,
that like as you develop, but even as I get older with this, I'm like, it's changing too. Like my personal training stuff changed a lot. Like it's all
mm,
old people now, which is great,
mm,
problem.
yeah,
But it's different, and it's kind of like as you get more into this, I find too. Like for me, I think it's a little different. Like I feel like I don't really have a niche. I feel like
mm,
as I've done it longer and longer, you kind of like you don't really have one. It's more like for me, it's more like the way the person is and how we connect with it and
mm,
how serious they are about their goals. That's just from
mm,
that's kind of what it seems to develop to for me. So
yeah,
similar, but a little bit different as well.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say for yourself, it's like what would you say? What would you describe your niche as, like personality wise or goals wise, or
Driven and like but they need help kind of thing where it's
yeah,
like driven, but they're the type of person that they know what they want. But it's one of those things where it's like they're willing to take feedback and they want to actually like communicate back and forth on a pretty regular basis.
yeah,
Like not like
yeah,
hand holding, but
yeah,
communication and collaborating and trying to like figure out, especially with the powerlifters, that's what I find the most fun is when I have a client that's actually like, hey, I feel this. I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about it. And I'm like, well, oh, I saw this, and I'm like, that's cool, but like, we can play with that. But this is when we should put that in. This is what we need right now,
mm,
and here's why. Oh, that makes sense. But I was thinking this. I'm like, yeah, fair. But and then they're like, okay, yeah, I get it now. And then their training
yeah,
goes boom,
yeah.
like, pretty much every single time. And I find it's sometimes hard to find people that actually want to do that. Like they'll
What do you go
do,
ahead?
but then like to do it is sometimes harder. And like you can push them towards it, but at some point, people do need to be the ones that drive their own kind of goal to a degree. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've definitely noticed as well. Like a lot of people might see the finished product on my page or with the
Yeah, you got some
transformations and stuff
phenomenal
like that.
transformations.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. But what I was going to say is, I think a lot of guys they want that, they think they want that, and then you actually just put the plan in front of them. Right, this is your training, this is your nutrition, and it's like it creates a disconnect there. They realize they don't really want it bad enough, or they're just not willing to do it.
Okay. So what do you feel like? Is it more like they see it and it's kind of one of those things where it's like they just don't like what they want to do doesn't align with what they need, what they want doesn't align with what they want to do kind of thing?
Um,
Or is it
I
more
think
just
a lot
like
of guys
that?
have maybe a fear or an attachment to like their own level of standards that they're currently sort of playing at. They're not used to prepping food, weighing food, like tracking their training, and just they like to be more free spirited in that sense. And like it just seems like overwhelming at the start to really just dive in and go.
That makes sense. So what do you do with them at that point? What kind of happens there?
Um, yeah. Yeah. Usually it's like if I'm honest, usually probably just a straight up. talking to, like, this is what you just got to do, and just break it down really simply. And I do want to stress as well that I actually find, like, it actually, and I always say this, is like, my goal as your coach is to simplify your life. It's not to complicate it. And like, even one of my guys just checked in yesterday, and he had been coming from a point of pretty much of that mindset where he just was not tracking anything. He was, and he had it, when we had our initial consultation, he had a lot of reservations, and he was like, I'm really not confident about this nutrition stuff. He put on a good bit of extra weight and stuff over the years, and he was like, I just don't know if I'll be able to do it. And now he's locked into this point where he just put in his check-in, just kind of silly comment or lighthearted comment. He was like, what do I eat? Protein. What do I lift? Heavy circles. Whereas it's just very, like, he doesn't need to think. He has kids, he has a career, he just doesn't need to think about, oh, I'll have this. Or sometimes when you eliminate that freedom, it actually just simplifies your life. And like, eat this at this time, and it frees up your mental space even for other more important goals in life, with career and family and all that.
Yeah, so just simplify, because like it's not anything you ask a client as a fitness coach, I don't think is generally out of the question of possibility for someone to do. It's more just like getting them to that point,
Yeah,
which you
yeah,
executed like very well on that. So
yeah, yeah,
that makes a
man.
lot of sense. No, it's one of those things where it's like you can always influence people, which I find funny when I'll talk to new trainers and like I can't get them to do it. And I'm like, well, how are you telling them? Like, I just told them to do it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
bro,
Yeah,
we need
yeah,
to do a little more than that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Different
You
ways.
do have there is definitely a certain element of just meeting people where they're at too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you always have to do that. So
yeah,
one other question for you is I know you focus more on training, you actually solely train men, I think, right?
yeah, yeah. That's right.
So how did that kind of come about? Is it more just it aligns better with you, or you're easier to coach them? I think it's more your personality would definitely fit it.
Yeah, it ties back into just pretty much just what we were talking about. I found time and time again, when I was coaching women, for the most part, a lot of the kind of challenges that I would come up against would be like around emotional, like maybe emotional eating, or just emotional volatility as a whole around training. And I'm pretty in that context. In that context alone, I think I can be pretty, like, just like black or white, just do it or don't. Like, you
Yeah,
just
I can
need
see
to fucking
that.
you just need to fucking step up and fucking do it. And
Yeah,
it's kind of ironic, because it's probably maybe a little bit of yin and yang, because I can be quite soft. So
yeah,
I have 5 sisters. I grew up in a house full of women. I'm like kind of naturally maybe more, I could have soft spoken, like in day-to-day life and stuff like
yep.
that. But just when it comes to training, I'm just like, I just don't know how to, I don't know how to
Yeah,
deal
you
with
don't have
that.
that
And yeah,
with you. You're like,
yeah,
I get it,
yeah,
but I don't get it.
yeah,
No, I have that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
agree,
So
especially.
I don't know, when my last, I don't know, I don't remember one sort of defining moment where I'm like, I'm not coaching
It
men
just kind
ever
of
again,
happened.
or women. Yeah, it just kind of happened where I was just like, no,
Well,
it's what I enjoy. Basically, it is what I enjoy,
yeah,
and I do enjoy that kind of, maybe, yeah, just maybe male company in that sense, or just that kind of vibe and the tribe, and the kind of like creating a space, and creating a kind of a movement for men to really elevate their standards and push forward.
yeah, because I would say like it's kind of like you never really plan for anything, which I find very
Mhm.
interesting because that's not seems to be the norm anymore. Everyone's kind of like, I'm gonna plan out my career, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna be a trainer, I'm gonna do this, and you've done quite well with it, which speaks to the fact that they're just going with the flow. But something that I've noticed is like you have this very like it kind of all aligns. Like it's not fake. Like it's very much like I have this niche, I have this team of people, this tribe, and they all kind of like because I was in it, so like everyone kind of like does align with that, and like maybe in the beginning you don't, but over time like that, like the community just kind of grows everyone into it. So you want to talk a little more about like how you went about that because it seems like it's just authentic coaching, but maybe there's more. Like some people might think there's more to it, and there probably is.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, John. It just comes down to an authenticity, and really, like, I've put things up on Instagram. I can't, nothing even comes to mind where, like, maybe my mother would be like, "Oh, don't." people might not like that if you say that, or
I mean, there's
you know,
probably some
or
things I can kind of think that. I'm like, there's some things.
you know, I got
Not
like
bad. They're just it's
one
just
of the, probably one of the from university, that if there's probably one line that I ever remember, it's so funny. It's just like, if you try to market to everyone, you'll market to no one.
that's
So
very true.
basically, yeah, just be yourself and like get
Mhm.
off the, yeah. Like there's a million vanilla coaches out there with no opinions and no
Yeah,
personal life and or no personality. So it's like, just put yourself out there and whatever's important, truly important to you, even if it's like politics, religion, whatever, don't be afraid to cross any lines, as long as you truly feel it, and just put it out there. And I think one filter, I suppose, that I'll kind of mention for myself is like, if I'm in doubt about putting something on Instagram or putting something out there, I just ask myself, like, is it true? And if it's true, fine. And is it hurtful to somebody else? Like, and obviously if it is hurtful, I won't put it up. Or if it's needlessly kind of hurtful to somebody else, I wouldn't put it up. But if it's true and it's not hurtful, then just fucking put it out, put it out, put it out. And then,
yeah, because
you'll
the
kind of
intention is
naturally attract
pure,
people.
and it's not even
Exactly,
your
exactly.
intention isn't even to become like viral. It's just like, and I think that's where the disconnect can get a lot with some people too.
Yes, yeah,
Try to become like
definitely.
viral versus just like authentic.
Definitely, definitely. And I can see, I've seen one or two coaches, and they're trying their best. They're finding their own voice, finding their own niche, but they're
Right?
almost kind of becoming like real creators, or
Content creators.
comedy skits or something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't know if that even like helps. In all
Yeah,
honesty.
it'll get you. It can get you likes, but it doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily get you people that like, hey, this, it doesn't necessarily get you clients. Essentially, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And to be, well, confessing everything here, I did find as well, like, even I have to be careful myself with my own sort of voice and my own. Uh, I'm conscious, maybe over the past year or so, of maybe creating a sort of a character of myself, or people, sometimes when people meet me, they're expecting this guy that's like the 60-second Instagram guy, like, hey, you better step up and blah 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 blah, and that strong energy, and
Yeah, no, I
really
know.
when it,
Because you're actually
yeah,
a lot more quiet in person. Like
yeah,
not in a bad way.
yeah,
It's just you're a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
more
and
just like calm and just like, "Meh, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm really not that like intense, unless like I switch on from my big lifts, or if I have a client going for a lift in a powerlifting competition, yeah, let's go, whatever. But
I
outside
know
of
you're
that, I'm
very
very chill. So, but there is a balance definitely to be struck between, like, obviously if I'm putting up a reel or putting up on someone Instagram, you got to give some
well,
energy.
you
You
have
don't
to have
want to
some
be,
energy or
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
what
I
are you
have
doing?
found a little bit of self confliction, maybe, or questioning the past year or so, just like make sure that I'm not becoming, an internet personality, and just staying true to myself too.
Yeah. I mean, as a coach, I think that's very important too. Because then, are you a coach or are you a influencer? Is what I usually ask people
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they like
yeah,
talk about this stuff. I know for me, it's been a little bit of a weird kind of journey, and I've kind of like been like, hey, like I've kind of gone full circle with a lot of my stuff, and I've been like, oh, hey, just focus on the coaching. It's what you like to do. I kind of went into like a lot of the business stuff, especially on the gym side,
mhm,
and I found that didn't really kind of speak to me. And I felt like I was doing a lot of that, like more
yeah,
salesing and more like trying to put on like a sales facade and
mm,
like create content. Now I'm like, you know what, just coach. That's what I like to do.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think
I've seen that. I've seen you put up stuff like that as well, and to be honest, I like that. I like those reminders. I value those reminders for myself. I've seen you put them out there. Like, it's easy to,
yeah,
yeah, it's easy to, it is
get
competitive out there,
lost.
and we all want to get clients, and yeah, it's
Yeah.
easy to get lost. And there's a bunch of guys online saying,
Oh,
hey,
there's so
you
many.
can make 50,000 a month and you join my program. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of different mentors and all that kind of stuff. And I think at the end of the day, if you just double down on trying to be the best coach you can be, that's, if you come back to that number one, like, then you can't go wrong. And one, I think it was, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Jonathan Goodman. He runs the online trainer academy. Just something I remember I heard him say, like, again, probably 7 years ago when I first came to Canada, that I always boil it down to this: is like, the kind of golden rule is, do a good job, and make sure everybody knows about it too. So, like, do a good job and share your clients, share your transformations, whatever it is, or and but you have to do a good job first. But that's the golden rule, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's forgotten nowadays sometimes.
Yeah.
Like like we say it,
Yeah.
like they'll say it's not, but I'm like, I think it is to a degree with some of these younger coaches that I talk to. Like not
Yeah,
all of
I know.
them, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know I've been disappointed myself investing in coaches with what I got back, and I just in terms of the program and stuff that I got back, and I'm just like, oh, it's not like I feel like they didn't really just cookie cutter stuff, and
yeah,
it's disappointing. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Sometimes using the name versus the
yeah,
actual coaching stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit more of like programming because I think this is something we could definitely like bounce off each other on.
Yeah.
So what's your so you do so what kind of program do you do with your clients? I'm assuming it's like they all similar goals, so it's going to be more of a similar type deal. So maybe like a hybrid of powerlifting, bodybuilding. Like what does that kind of look like?
Totally, yeah, yeah. I would describe it as power building, and then more specifically, I call it the Kaizen power building system, which is probably a combination of what I have found to be most effective, or things that I have found to work well in terms of merging my powerlifting experience and yeah, powerlifting experience, and likewise with my bodybuilding experience. I think a lot of people, when they think bodybuilding, especially powerlifters or strength athletes, like their default sort of they just think bodybuilding. They're like, oh, it's like 5 sets of 15 reps. It's just like high volume, high reps, that kind of stuff. Whereas it's like that's what bodybuilding is. Whereas I'm more lean towards like high intensity side of things, like rest pause sets, hitting failure and stuff like that, and not shying away from that, and kind of combining that, balancing that with more your sort of typical reps in reserve and uh, cautious strength training, or conservative strength training, I suppose would be the way to describe it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I would say like you're doing more like those intensification style methods with the bodybuilding movement, and then still intensifying some of those major movements a little bit more. Would be kind of how you
Yeah,
would.
so the major movements, so I would be more of a fan of, like, say on your, for example, your squat, your bench, your deadlift, like leaving 1, 2, 3 reps in the tank each week, making sure that you're practicing perfect technique, making sure that you're leaving room to go up next week on week. Whereas if you're in a preacher curl machine, for example, I'm more inclined to really go to failure, maybe do a rest pause set. So take a 25-second rest and go again to failure, take another 25-second rest, go again to failure, and like maybe do 10, 3, 2 reps, something like that. And just really get good bang for a buck in terms of intensity and time with the muscle building side of things, and focus more on technique and rest reps in reserve in terms of the barbell lifts, more
Okay, so
technical
it's like a
stuff.
little bit different than like a traditional style powerlifting approach, especially the modern one that I kind of use with a lot of people now. You're definitely so you probably get a because their goals are more multifaceted, right? Hypertrophy is still, I would assume, a big thing with these guys.
Yeah, to be honest, the vast majority of guys that come to me, they really just want the physique, they want to look good, they want to look strong, and I always preach, if you want to look strong, there's
Strong.
no way to fake it. You gotta get strong,
You gotta be.
and we use the barbell movements, we use the powerlifting style movements, the strength training to forge that new muscle and build that sort of foundation of muscle. I know for me, in my experience, like I was a bodybuilder, as I said, for the first maybe 8 years, 16 to 24 or so. And then I just transitioned and I was, really trying hard at bodybuilding. And then I transitioned into powerlifting. And probably my first 6 to 12 months in powerlifting, like my back just blew up, my triceps blew up. Like I
I'm gonna
was
be good for the heavy stuff. Yeah.
from experiencing that, heavy stuff. So I believe both have a place in building a physique.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Like you have to have the heavy and the light. You have to have the high volume hypertrophy work. It makes a lot of sense. I find in the modern powerlifting, especially with like people that I work with, it's really hard to get them to do that on a lot of accessory stuff because they want that main lift to be like their main, like they kind of it's just and it's really hard to always get you have to like balance the accessories with that, I find, at least for me, with a lot of
Yeah. I find a lot of guys these days are like really um there's I know exactly the type of lifter and powerlifter you're talking about. I think a lot of guys these days, they like to put themselves in a box. Like I'm a powerlifter, and they make a joke like, and I know it's lighthearted or whatever, but like, oh, any more than 5 reps, I don't do that, ha ha ha, whatever. And then look. likewise with the, the bodybuilders, they have to wear like
I don't
the
do less than
the
5 reps or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I don't do less than 5 reps, or I don't go heavy, and
They speak in
they have
absolute.
to. Yeah, they speak in absolutes, and then likewise it comes with the whole fashion, like you're wearing SBD or you're wearing Gasp, or you're kind of putting your own little box. And
Mm,
maybe just from myself, as I said, I do done some bodybuilding, powerlifting, strongman. I'll never, beyond some maybe a lighthearted joke or something, I'll never
actually take it.
like
Yeah.
rag on even like CrossFit or like whatever. Like I don't really believe in like staying in it. You use what's most effective for you, and use the tools that you enjoy as well. And I don't think people need to be so married to their methods.
Yeah, no, that's like a very interesting concept. 'Cause I find nowadays, especially everyone's like, it's this or this. And I'm like, I think it's from Instagram, to be
I
completely
think the world is getting a bit more polarized as a whole.
honest.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just like, it's not really. And even for like me as like a bigger power, like I do a lot of high rep accessory work. I don't do like crazy high rep main lift work because I find that just doesn't work for me. And I take that to like that more moderate approach because I find if I kill myself every week, I'm not going to recover. But like the
What would you say is crazy high rep uh, main
40,
work?
40
Say
rep,
again.
40 rep leg presses.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah,
like 10 reps, like to
yeah,
actual failure,
yeah.
right? Which is not as common, but I find it very fun.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's not the funnest when I'm doing it though.
yeah, yeah.
It's not fun at
It's
all.
a it's a whole just a place. It's a whole special place, mentally, physically, spiritually, even to really lock in and go for some high rep sets and hard
And I think
training like
every
that.
athlete needs to do that.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
even like, or even just anyone in the gym if they're trying to get really good results. Like you can't just train always in a little box.
yeah.
Like you have to get, and this is where I find powerlifters could really borrow from a lot of other things because like they're always in that box,
Mhm.
right? So like they're kind of, oh, well, I don't have the right barbell, or I don't have a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them. I don't have the
Yeah,
right. Oh, today I just don't feel that great. Oh, it's not moving at an RP 7 today. Well, it's
yeah,
me
yeah,
today. Doesn't matter.
yeah.
There's a little bit more of that would be interesting because I find that's something I've noticed, even just in all like even talking to some bodybuilders. I'm like, people train smarter, but they don't train as hard, if that makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
hard to strike that balance, and I
yeah,
think a lot of some guys even they don't train very smart. They train hard, but the method is not really behind it. And yeah, it's hard to strike that balance
it
between
is.
training smart and training hard. But yeah, definitely, I think we all see it. Or anyone that's been around powerlifting for more than maybe 10 years or so, it's like yeah, there is a new kind of breed of powerlifter that's like very fussy about the barbells and the RPs and the
It can be.
rather yeah, rather than just loading it up and fucking training hard, and it's,
Yeah, not West
yeah.
Side anymore.
Yeah, yeah, a
Not like
lot of my, I suppose, powerlifting heroes or the physiques and stuff that I would look up to the most would be guys from the 70s, 80s. Like there's a powerlifter comes to mind, Roger Estep. Just a couple of guys like Bill Kazmaier. A lot of the old strength athletes like had a ton of muscle, great physiques, and a lot of them, even Ed Cohen, like would have been doing 10, sets of 10 reps and accessory work and all that kind of stuff. So bring it back to basics is never a bad thing.
yeah. Pat, I'm just gonna have to because I don't have the I just using the free Zoom. So I'm just gonna
Okay.
hit stop and then we'll log back in and then we'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about
Cool.
that.
No worries.
I want to cut you off. So I was like,
Yeah.
wait, but now we'll have to
Oh,
log
I
out.
see. I see it now. Less
Yeah.
than 1 minute. Yeah. Cool.
All right. See you in a
I'll
minute.
leave.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. And we're back.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say like powerlifting, like the whole like kind of culture of training has definitely changed a lot. I think that's kind of what we're getting at there. But yeah, I think it's definitely very different. I think a lot of it's like good in some ways, I think you can see that too, but then I think there's other ways where it's like you're seeing it kind of really there's a lot of shifting.
Mhm. Where do you see the shifting?
So I'd say like there's I guess if I use powerlifting, for example, I think it's more just like the attitudes of the lifters are shifting. So
Mhm.
they used to be a lot more like West Side Barbell style, you
Yeah.
know, that like raw, we don't really care. We'll just throw the weight around. And a lot of times, probably not much thought to what they're doing outside of, okay, this is what we're doing today, and we're max it out. All right. And then
Mhm.
we're going to max out our accessories. Whereas now it's kind of like, oh, well, it's almost like to the point where it's so neurotic that every detail has to be considered,
Yeah.
which I think is
Yeah.
good if you're trying to become the best. But to get there, I think you have to put in hard work before that stuff even matters.
Yeah, yeah, it's becoming a lot. I think, and this is, I guess, just the nature of um, how things go. But I feel like it's almost becoming more serious as well. And
It is.
obviously, the standard of the sport is going way up. The totals are just getting crazy at every weight class now. But yeah, I think maybe there is maybe a lesson though to be had for your average sort of amateur powerlifter, just to enjoy the process a little bit
Yeah.
more, and just have fun in the gym, and yeah, like do it as a hobby. And yeah,
Yeah. I've noticed the younger kid numbers are going way up.
yeah,
All the numbers are going up, but especially the junior and sub junior numbers have gone like insanely high. But I think that's
yeah,
just because a lot of them are starting very young
yeah,
now. And like there's actually better information now, which I think is good. Like before
yeah.
when we were starting, I don't think we could go online and use like a chatbot GPT to be like, how could we become a
Yeah.
powerlifter? Or
Yeah,
even like even
yeah,
the YouTube content that's out there now.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think
You
for us,
actually,
we had to like look at textbooks or like I think that was kind of it,
yeah. I
really.
know for me, I
Communication.
traveled in Ireland a little bit, like drove a couple hours either way to go train with older guys and stuff like that as well. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's
yeah,
like kind of where I learned a lot too from like just older
mhm,
guys in the gym. Because that
yeah,
seemed to be the only way. Like I know for
yeah.
me, like why I started powerlifting was I was in university, same as you, and this old guy at the gym was just like, "Yeah, you're pretty big." And then I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "Yeah, you should power." And he's just following me around. He's like, "You should powerlift." I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "No, no, you're powerlifting." And then he's like, "You're working out with me." I'm like, "Okay." So I worked out with him, and then I was like, "Oh, this is kind of fun." And he's like, "Do you want to? What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I kind of maybe want to be a strength coach." He's like, "Okay, well then you should lift." And that's when I just started competing.
Nice, nice, nice,
So it's
nice.
it's pretty similar, right? A lot of people have that similar kind of thing where things develop, right? But yeah, I'd say yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think programming wise, like what are your thoughts on like how to create? I know this is kind of a little bit out of your thing, but like how do you well it's not, but it is a little way. Like how do you create like strength transference? Like what kind of things do you look for to like really create that in your clients?
I just didn't catch it. You said, "How do I create strength?" What was? Did you say?
Transference. It's like carry over.
Transference.